little girl disappears from her bed, but 9 days later she's found in the same room, and the story only gets weirder from there. This is the case of Paulette, a mystery that gripped Mexico, shocked the world, and led us asking ourselves, how does a child go missing without ever leaving the house? Buckle up, because what you're about to hear is stranger than fiction, and some say the truth is still being covered up. Welcome back to another Beauty and Crime Sunday with me, in which I do my skincare while we talk about different cases I found interesting this week. So before we actually start with the story, we need to understand the family first. Because it wasn't just mom, dad, and the kids. There is two other people that are very important to this case. The nannies. Their names were Marta and Erica. They took care of the kids full time, switching off every week. 1 week was Marta, then the next one would be Erica. And also what's important, I would say, in this case is that the two nannies were actually family. They were sisters. When everything actually started, it was Erica's turn to be in the house. Martha was sent to arrive a little later that day. So now let's talk about the rest of the family. The father, Mauricio Gebara, was 38 years old. He worked in buying and selling racetracks, and also ran a business with his brother, building affordable housing for low-income families. The mother, Lisette Ferra, was 34 years old. She came from a wealthy Lebanese family and worked as a lawyer. She was elegant, well-spoken, and very protective of her daughters. That part will be important later. Their oldest daughter was also named Lisette, but everyone called her Chess. I don't know why. So we will call her that too. She was 7 years old at the time of the crime. And she was basically the mom's version mini-me. And then there is the other little girl at the heart of the case, Paulette. Even though her official name was Paulette, everyone called her Paulette, so I will just call her that. Paulette was just 4 years old, about to turn 5 in few months. She was born very premature. She weighed under 1 kilogram. I think it was like 800 grams, so less than 2 pounds. So she spent months in the hospital fighting to survive. And that's the part that makes this case heartbreaking. Paulette had already fought so hard to be in this world. But what came next, no one could have predicted. Now, when a baby is born prematurely, there are often serious complications. In Paulette's case, those serious complications was a cerebral hemorrhage, something that it's sadly very common for babies that are born premature. This stroke left Paulette with partial paralysis on one side of her body. Her arm and legs were affected by this, and she also had trouble speaking. She could only say a few words. But here's the thing, Paulette was lucky in one major way. She was born into a family that could afford top-level care. Her parents did everything they could to give her the best care possible so she could have the best life. Those things included also the best therapies you can think of. In fact, if you look at Paulette's pictures, you would never guess she had some kind of paralysis. She looked like any other little girl. She had no intellectual disabilities, and she was determined, which was the part that always stood out. Her parents enrolled her in equine therapy, which would be horseback riding therapy, which helped her improve a ton. If you actually watch her walk, you could kind of see a drag in her leg, but it was barely visible. She even went to a regular school, not a special one, and the teachers all said the same thing. Paulette was a fighter, a little girl full of drive, energy, and the will to overcome anything. After I explained their life, here is where things become a little strange. It's Monday morning. Erica, the nanny that had that shift that morning, gets up like any other day. She walks into Paulette's room to open the blinds and wake her up. Nothing out of the ordinary. But when she pulls out the blanket, the bed is empty. Now, quick note, this isn't a typical kid's bed. Paulette, being from a very wealthy family, had her own full-size double bed, so very massive for a 4-year-old. It sat right in the middle of the room, only the headboard touching the wall. Because of Paulette's limited mobility, but also because she actually moved a lot in the bed, they would place pillows on the side of the bed to keep her safe and steady for the night. And she just had started sleeping in that bed too. Before that, she slept in a crib. So this was still very new for her. That's important. Now back to Erica. She's confused, right? So she checks the bathroom, nothing. She checks the living room, nothing. The parents' room, nada. No sign of Paulette anywhere. She even checked the entire apartment twice. Still no Paulette. And here is the real what's going on moment. It takes a few minutes, not seconds, for the parents even to realize her daughter is missing. By that point, the older sister, Chess, had already left for school. So now Erica, clearly panicking, has to tell the parents, "Hey, I cannot find Paulette." And in that exact moment, as if it was perfectly timed, the other nanny, Marta, shows up for her shift. Erica quickly fills her in the details, and the search kicks off for real. But here is where things get intense, because remember, this is not a normal family. They had connections, political ones. Rumors say they had connections with very influential people, and they weren't shy about using them. Instead of calling local police first, Mauricio makes a call to his sister, who then makes a call to the Mexican government, like straight up to the top. Within minutes, they got state-level officials involved in the case, before an actual search of the house ever happened. And leading the charge, who could it be? The Attorney General of the state of Mexico at that time, Alberto Batbaz. And yeah, that's a real name. And under him, the head of police force, Alberto Castillo. Two very high-ranking officials. So things are moving very fast, maybe too fast. Cameras in the apartment complex, yeah, they have them. But guess what? They only stream live footage. No recordings, which means if you wanted to know what happened last night, you wouldn't know. There is no tape, nothing to review, just a big empty gap. And we are just getting started in this case. At first, the police have to rely almost entirely on the forensic tech are telling them. And what are they saying? Well, there is nothing. No forced entry, no fingerprints out of place, no signs that anyone came in and took Paulette. And yeah, she comes from a very wealthy family, so sure, someone could have come in silently into the house. But if this was kidnapping, where is the ransom call or the ransom note? Nowhere to be seen. No one has asked for any money in exchange for Paulette. That's when doubt started to creep in. Could it be that no one took her at all? Still, the first theory they have is she was kidnapped. But here is where things get bizarre. If that was the theory, why didn't they use the house as a crime scene? The apartment was not sealed off. No one stopped from entering the house. They don't search for prints, hairs, fibers. None of that. And while the police hesitate, the Gebara family are starting to call relatives and friends for emotional support. locked. But instead of waiting outside, these people just barge in the house. They move through the halls. They step into Paulette's room. Some of them even, they start touching her things, unknowingly destroying any evidence that might be in that room. And here is the part where blows everyone's mind. Someone actually slept in Paulette's bed. Like the same bed that a 4-year-old just went missing in. Meanwhile, the police start bringing the canine units. They hand the dogs the sheet that Paulette was sleeping in. And that sheet, by the way, had urine stains, which wasn't really unusual for her. Keep that detail in mind because it will come back later. This moment, the dogs, the sheet, and what comes next is the most talked about thing about this case. The thing is that the police got into Paulette's bedroom. They finally took a closer look to her bed. It's one of those standard beds with a wooden or upholstered frame. Not too high, not too low. It has the usual setup, 2 pillows placed on each side of the bed to keep Paulette falling into the ground, since she had limited mobility. Underneath the comforter, there is a fitted sheet. But what is clear is that they removed the sheet and they found the urine stains on them. And this isn't surprising because Paulette had nighttime accidents usually. But that sheet is important because it became the scent of reference for the dogs. So what did they do? They take the sheet off. They let the dogs smell it. They are standing in the main entrance of the house. And the second they catch the scent, they sprint. They start sprinting to the Gebara family's house. They head right up the family's unit. They enter Paulette's room, sniff everything, and then nothing. No alerts, no hits. They recognize her scent. Obviously, she was there. But no signs of where she went next. The dogs are then taken to also check the cars. One belonging to Mauricio the father, and then the other one belonging to the mother, Farah. The dogs pick up Paulette's scent in both of the cars. But again, she lived there, so of course her scent would be in both of the cars. So nothing very conclusive. But here is where people start getting crazy about this case. The bed was not fully searched. The comforter left in place, the pillows untouched, the frame untouched. They pulled out one of the sheets, give it to the dogs, and that was it. They left the bed as it was. The bed stayed made even though a family member slept in that bed afterwards. A little gross, but okay. Meanwhile, police are getting nowhere. With no physical evidence and no suspects in sight, they decided it's time to start interviewing the parents. Let's start with Mauricio, the dad. He starts telling investigators that the weekend before Paulette vanished, he took both daughters, Paulette and her older sister, along with nanny Erica, to Valle de Bravo for a little getaway. Lisette, the mom, did not go. She said she needed a break, and she spent the weekend with a friend instead. On Saturday night, she arrives at home, and she's the first to arrive. According to Lisette, when Mauricio pulls up a little later, she opens up the car, gets Chess out first, and then picks up Paulette in his arms, wrapped in a blanket, and carries her up to the bed. Now remember, Paulette is almost 5 years old. She's not a baby, and it's kind of hard to be carrying her because at that point she might have been like 12 kilograms, so a little hard to move her around easily. And that detail will become important later also in the case. So anyway, Lisette puts Paulette in her bed and Mauricio parks the car. When he comes back into the apartment, Mauricio never sees Paulette ever again. By the next morning, she's gone. So the investigators ask Lisette what happened that night? Are you sure about your version of the story? And she's like, well, of course, yes. While Mauricio was parking the car, I quickly brushed Paulette's teeth. She was half asleep anyway. I helped her into her pajamas with Erica's help. I can't do everything by myself. And then we tucked her into her bed. I even gave her my blessing before she went to bed. Sounds sweet, right? Except now it's Erica's turn to talk. The nanny that was there actually that night. And her story, very, very, very different.
Ya le estaba poniendo la pijama aquí sentada. La tenía parada aquí, poniéndole la pijama. Ya llegué yo, la terminé de vestir, la arropamos, la nana y yo. Le di la bendición.
Erica says, no, that did not happen like that. According to her, she's the one that did everything. Erica brushed Paulette's teeth. Erica dressed her. Erica tucked her in. And she makes it clear Lisette isn't really involved in her daughter's lives. She says, and I quote, Lisette is more of a mother to the family's 2 dogs than it is to the 2 daughters. Yep, you heard that right. And that isn't only Erica saying it. The other nanny, Marta, who wasn't there at night, totally bucks her up. She said Lisette had been very distant lately. Both her and Mauricio, actually. Like they were just checked out of parenting completely. Naturally, this explodes in the media because always, all these cases, they always do. People start wondering if the parents weren't paying attention. What happened to Paulette that night? But wait, it gets weirder. Remember I told you earlier that when Paulette disappeared, family members and friends started going into the apartment. Well, their apartment, the fancy duplex, becomes packed with people. Some are cooking, some are comforting, and some are literally just walking through the crime scene, possibly stepping on crucial evidence. One of the people who shows up is Amanda, Lisette's best friend. She's there to support, right? Completely fine. But here's the kicker. Amanda starts sleeping in Paulette's bed. Yeah, the same bed that Paulette disappeared. The same bed that may or may not contain crucial evidence for this case. And no, they didn't change the sheets while she was sleeping in there. Not even the comforter. Not even the one that Paulette peed on. Like, hello? What are we doing here? A missing child. An unsearched bed. And now someone is using it as a guest room. It's beyond bizarre. And what really gets me about this case, and mostly other people that know about this case, is that police just let it happen. They don't secure the scene. They don't take the mattress. They don't check between the layers. They just let Amanda sleep there in the same bed with the same dinosaur sheets. With the same everything. This case, I'm telling you, it gets wilder. And we haven't even hit the twist yet. The police were already starting to pick up on something that didn't quite sit right. Paulette's parents, well, let's just say they weren't the most present parents. And while not trying to generalize here, but sometimes when a family is that wealthy, the family dynamic changes a bit. The nannies end up doing most of the parenting of the child, while the parents focus on other things, like could be their careers. But in this case, the police started smelling something fishy. Because remember what I said at the beginning? There is no ransom call. So that already rules out the classic kidnapping, which that means they start looking at the family members closer. And what they find, let me tell you, it's wild. Do you remember I told you Paulette's father Mauricio went on a weekend trip with the girls to Valle de Bravo? Supposedly because Lisette was kinda tired, so she wanted to have a weekend also with the girls, specifically with Amanda, you know, the same best friend that she slept in Paulette's bed. Well, I don't know if you could have guessed, but that was a lie. Well, half a lie. She was at a hotel, but not at the beach. It was a luxury golf resort, and she wasn't there just sipping on wine with her best friend. Nope, there was 8 other people with them, all men, including her lover. Yep, Lisette was having an affair. And of course, Mauricio did not know. Not yet, at least. He would have found out later. And a spoiler alert, that discovery led to their divorce. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because even that came to light after. The cracks in the marriage were already there. And here comes the part that it's very hard to ignore. People started noticing that Lisette's behavior was off. I mean, really off. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging for her daughter to come back. She wasn't even really talking about Paulette. Robotic, like she was kinda reading the, I don't know, the restaurant menu. And yeah, we always say in these cases, yeah, some people have different ways of taking grief, but when a mother usually goes into every single TV show and tries to control the narrative when you don't even know that she has been kidnapped or where she is, I find it a little weird, yes. Usually the people that show up in TVs is the whole family trying to find her while crying, but she sounded like she was kind of reading scripts, so do I trust her? Not really. One of the interviews, actually, and probably one of the most known interviews in this case, was filmed right in Paulette's room. The interviewer sits right on Paulette's bed, and Lisette sits right next to her. And it's not just what she's saying, it's how she's saying it. She even jokes that maybe Harry Potter took her. Yep. You heard that right. I would say, okay, people have different ways of grieving, but this is just too weird.
Tenga pantalones para hacerle algo a un ángel. Pero esto es muy importante, quien tenga a tu hija debe saber que no puede pedir comida ni agua, que se les tiene que dar. Se le tiene que dar. ¿Medicamentos? Sí necesita medicamentos y sobre todo terapia. Pero ahorita un medicamento que necesite que se le esté dando. Es que no lo puedo decir, pero pues sí necesita atención especial médica.
It's that level of sarcasm, which, don't take me wrong, I love sarcasm. But in this context, it's just eerie. Weird. Later on, they would actually diagnose Lisette with a possible personality disorder, which might have explained some of her weird behavior. But still, for the public and the police at that time, it was still weird because they didn't know yet. During the same interview, Lisette holds up a small blue guitar, just a little toy, but it also ends up becoming important later in the case. And at one point in the interview, she does tear up a little bit, but it's brief, like a flicker, and then it's gone. Now listen, as I said, I'm not saying that her behavior makes her guilty. Absolutely not. But it does stand out. It's the kind of thing that makes you go, wait, something is not right here. So what happens next? Well, the police starts rethinking everything. They got suspects, very suspicious ones, but nothing solid against them. It's all kind of vibes, no evidence. But the suspects, they're no strangers. They are Mauricio the dad, Lisette the mom, Marta and Erika, the 2 nannies. The 4 people closest to Paulette. And here is where things become even messier, because it wasn't messy before, you know? Since they botched the investigation from the beginning, seriously, they didn't even seal off the apartment. They decide to do something drastic. They call a press conference, and in that conference, they announce that these 4 people will be placed under house arrest. Well, technically, hotel arrest. Yep, you heard that right also. They move them all to a hotel where they will be under surveillance while the investigation continues. Now, while they are stuck in that hotel, the police start calling in Lisette for something very strange. Reconstructions of the scene. They take her back to the apartment multiple times to recreate the night that Paulette went missing. But here's the kicker. They used a baby doll for it. A doll? A baby? Paulette was 4 years old at that time and weighed around 15 kilos probably. You can't really recreate what happened using a baby doll. It's completely unrealistic. You don't hide or carry a toddler the same way that you would move a baby. It's a total mismatch. Still, while all of this was happening, something unbelievable happened. One day during one of these reconstructions, there is a forensic expert checking the bed. The very bed where Paulette disappeared. He's checking around, lifting the covers, the comforter, the sheets, and then he notices something. Also, he was checking because he could smell something weird. There were some brownish stains on the duvet cover. Weird. He pulls it out a little more, checks underneath, and then he smells something. It's faint, but it's still there. So he calls the team over. They carefully begin to search even deeper, and then they find her. Right there, between the mattress and the wooden frame, is the lifeless body of Paulette. Now let me explain how that even makes any sense, because it's bizarre. Paulette's bed, as I said before, was a double bed. A larger bed with 2 mattresses, one on top of the other. Together they stood about 40 centimeters. But here's the thing. The mattresses did not fit. There was a gap between 15 centimeters between the mattress and the footboard. And on each side of the mattress there was 2 pillows, which created some space underneath. What they said it happened was that Paulette somehow slid or was placed into the narrow space between the mattress and the footboard, becoming trapped in some way, and her body, wrapped in the bedding, stayed hidden there for over a week. And get this, the forensic experts said that the bedroom did not smell bad, that somehow Paulette's body was so tangled in that bedsheet and fitted so tightly into the frame that decomposition was barely noticeable. It's honestly very hard to believe, especially because in that time the bedroom had been cleaned, filmed, walked through by the police, and even hosted interviews in the same bed. And yet her body was just right there. So when the news break that Paulette's body was found and discovered in her own bed between the mattress and the frame, people are shocked. No one could have believed it. And honestly, neither could have I when I first heard it. The body of Paulette had just been found between the bed and the frame. But here is the question on everyone's mind. How is that even possible? How? Like, how can a whole child lie dead inside the bed for days and no one notices? And I mean, no one. The police had been there. Family members had been there. Cameras had been there. Even the canine dogs had smelled everything, and they could never found the dead body. No smell, no weird shape in the bed. Now listen to this. The Casimiro sisters, which are the nanny, they were the first to say, that's impossible. They made that bed, which yeah, they technically did not take out the whole bed, but they made the bed on top of the other sheets. So they were saying that's impossible. And also they were in and out of Paulette's room every single day. And they swear there was no way the body could have been there the entire time. Then the journalist who recorded the room and the interview on Paulette's bed said the exact same thing. There was no odor, no lump, no signs of a body at all. And remember, they sat on the bed, so even though, okay, she was maybe deep down in the, you know, when you sit on top of a bed and there is, I don't know, something, even a doll, you can kind of feel it because it's kind of mismatched. So you can kind of, if you sit on top of it, you can kind of feel that there must be something underneath. Even I had a couple times that my dolls went underneath the bed. You can still feel that. And the dolls are tiny. So imagine a human being, I don't know how tall she was, but if she was 15 kilos, if you sat on top of her, you could probably feel that. Even Amanda, Lisette's best friend, who literally slept in that bed a couple of nights, by the way, said, there was no one there. I would have known. And let's be real, can you imagine waking up one day and realizing you may have slept with a dead body? That's a straight up a horror movie shit. So naturally the public starts thinking the body must have been placed there afterwards. Now, while all of these people are giving conflicting statements, the state attorney of Mexico, Alberto Vaz, remember him, holds up a press conference, and what does he say? He's convinced the parents were involved somehow, that the body does not just magically appear there, and that they must have placed it. But then the autopsy begins, and let me tell you, things get even messier. I feel like I have said that maybe 10 times in the video, but this case is very messy. According to that initial report, Paulette had been alive for 3 whole days after her disappearance. Allegedly, they said she was trapped somewhere and died on a slow death. And the worst part, the report also mentions there was traces of alcohol in her body. So of course the media goes wild. People start forming theories. Did the parents drug her? Was she hidden on purpose? Why didn't anyone hear her? It's basically chaos in Mexico. But just when people start thinking that the case is starting to make a little sense, the official autopsy is revealed and it contradicts everything. So I have no idea where the other autopsy came in. Yep, the final report says no drugs, no alcohol, no signs of physical abuse, no trauma, and no evidence of intentional harm. Those traces of alcohol, the coroner explained that it was likely a byproduct of the decomposition of the body, a natural fermentation process of the body, especially in the conditions that Paulette was found in, wrapped in tightly in the bedding. Also, those minor bruises in her body, they were likely self-inflicted from bumping into things, especially in the parts of her body that she had no motor control in. Because remember, Paulette had limited mobility. And the final twist, the content in her stomach matched exactly what she had for dinner that night. Meat eaten in Valle del Bravo. So what does that really mean? The case that once looked like a crime scene now looks like a tragic accident. But does that make sense to you? Remember the dad in Valle del Bravo with a nanny? Well, it's confirmed. Paulette lost her life a couple hours later after she arrived home and going to bed. The cause? Mechanical asphyxiation. But hold on, that doesn't mean someone strangled her and put a pillow over her face. No, this was positional asphyxia. The little girl, because of her condition, simply couldn't breathe. A silent death, a senseless tragedy. But now here comes the twist. Remember the state prosecutor, Alberto Vaz? He came back again. Yep, the same guy that went to the TV to blame the parents. Well, now with the autopsy contradicting him, he panics. And what does he do? He calls the FBI. Literally, he brings FBI agents from the US to help figure this out, because clearly nothing is adding up. And when this FBI agent comes into the duplex where this family lived in, he's horrified, completely shocked. Why? Because the crime scene is completely contaminated. Dozens of people had been inside. Journalists, cops, family members, friends, people sleeping in the same bed as Paulette died. No one sealed the place. No one preserved the scene. No one actually did their job right. So now all the crucial evidence gone. All she can really do is focus on the autopsy. And that's when the FBI agent finds something huge. A piece of medical tape inside of Paulette's mouth. Boom. New theory. Was Paulette being restrained? Were they trying to silence her? Even though because of her condition, she could barely talk or cry. Then comes Lisette Farah, the mom, with her explanation. We use that tape on her every night. Yep, Lisette and the nannies actually admitted that they used that tape on her mouth to keep it from actually opening, because with her condition, since she had paralysis, she would drool a lot when she was sleeping. So they put that medical tape on her so she wouldn't actually drool all over the place. Excuse me, but tape, medical, even though it's medical tape on a child that could not really move properly, who couldn't speak, who might not be able to breathe. And also here we come back to the same topic as before. If she drooled that much, why is Amanda sleeping in the same bed when the sheet has not been cleaned? Seriously? And she still says she didn't feel anything weird in those sheets, so no smell, no marks, no odd feeling, nothing. So in my opinion, it doesn't add up. And apparently they also put her between two pillows so she wouldn't move. So she can't breathe, she can't move. Yeah, sounds like she would have a really hard time to ask for help if anything happened. I mean, are we talking about a bed or a coffin? So after this second autopsy with the FBI, they reached a final conclusion. Finally, it was an accident. Paulette died of asphyxiation between the mattress and the bed frame. And just like that, on April 4th, the Gebara Farah family are all released from the house arrest they were in. But even so, a lot of people in Mexico still believe the mother did it. But obviously, even though they left the house arrest, everything changed from that moment. Lisette and Mauricio separated. I mean, can you actually blame them? Because it was at the same time that they were in that house arrest that Mauricio found out that Lisette was cheating on him. And by the way, he found out through the media. That whole sleepover with her bestie, a total lie. There were 8 men in the hotel room. 8 men. But wait, because it gets worse. While all this was unfolding, police actually released an audio recording, and they were rough. One of them was a conversation with Lisette and Chest, the older daughter, where Lisette tells her, "Don't say anything about the investigation." And the little girl confused goes, "Why, Mom?" Lisette says, "Because it could have been misunderstood. They could accuse us, the parents, of doing something bad to your sister. Or even accuse you, yes you, of having pushed her." Like what? The poor girl, literally terrified probably, because why would you put that on a 7-year-old child, says, "Okay, Mama, I'm not gonna say anything." But that's not all. After the recording came out, this time with Lisette and Mauricio, Lisette, sounding super concerned, goes, Mauricio, explain it to me. It's just too weird. And Mauricio says, there is no proof of anything. Honestly, at this point, nothing makes sense. Nothing. In the end, the case was officially closed. The final conclusion, what happened to Paulette was an accident. But this accident had already surrounded itself with scandal after another scandal. Even people leading the investigation got caught up in the drama. So, for example, Alberto Basbas, the guy who publicly accused the parents, yeah, he ended up resigning. And Alfredo Castillo, who had originally just been a police chief in this case, he somehow got promoted to a state prosecutor. Like, what is happening here? So yeah, the case was closed. For years, nobody actually talked about it again. But in Mexico, most people were convinced, especially about one thing, that Lisette, the mother, had something to do with it. Or that she knew something more than what she was saying. And you know what's wild? Even though everyone pointed the finger on Lisette, no one ever considered that maybe, just maybe, both parents had something to do with it. It was always her, just her. This could also be because since she cheated on him, probably. The family was so heartbroken that even they had separated funerals for each families. So the wake was attended by the Gebaras and the funeral by the Ferras. And of course the media was at the funeral filming Lisette, while Mauricio was not even there. So then rumors started circulating that it was probably him. It came this never-ending carousel of blame and speculation. More and more witnesses came forward claiming the same thing. The girl wasn't in the bed at first. Some say that maybe there was a tiny bump on the sheet that could have been her body, but the nannies did not see it. The interviewer did not see it. Nobody saw it. Even Amanda went on TV and said, look, I love Lisette, but I wouldn't put the hand in the fire for her. Like, okay, you still suspect your friend, but you're still chilling with her. Weird. And the Gebara family, Mauricio's side, they all came forward saying that they believed that Lisette had something to do with it, that she did something to that girl. They said that maybe Lisette could not stand her daughter anymore, that she was a burden, that she bothered her. Of course, none of it was ever proven. It was all just speculation, but still heavy, dark speculation. Years went by, and year 2020, yeah, that everyone was locked inside. This case came back to life on the internet. So years later, people started picking apart the case again, because that's what the internet does. One of the biggest things that resurfaced again was the interview. The one where Lisette is on the bed with the interviewer. In that video, she shows a blue pyjama, the blue pyjama that we talked earlier, that actually Paulette was sleeping in, and that's the pyjama they found her in, wrapped in all the sheets. So people started saying, what if Paulette wasn't even there all along? What if she was hiding somewhere else and later placed in the bed, already dead, dressed up in that pyjama? And honestly, it sounded suspicious as hell, until it turned out that the family had two identical pyjamas, one for Paulette and one for the sister, Chess. Even the nannies confirmed it after, so that theory scratched. But here is what came out a couple years after, and it didn't get enough attention. Alfredo Castillo, the guy who led the whole investigation, the one that got promoted, yeah, that one, finally released some evidence that he had buried for years. And I'm telling you, this part is wild. Remember how they took a bedsheet for the analysis? Well, they found pee on it, but not just that. Also saliva and more pee at the end at the foot of the bed, right where her body was found later. And yeah, this fits with the original theory. She is lit down, got trapped, suffocated, and that's where probably her body released the fluids once she was dead. But I don't know. The more I look at this case, the more it feels off, like I'm missing something, and there is pieces in the puzzle that just don't match. Especially when you remember that the medical tape over her mouth was half off, like it had been placed there or removed or loosened after. The drool, the pee, yeah, they tried to explain it after, but honestly, my opinion, just my opinion, don't come for me. I think the parents had something to do with it, or not that they intentionally killed her, but maybe there was an accident and then they decided to hide her body and then stage it. But I guess we will never know. I have looked at all angles of this, but there is just too many things that don't add up. I mean, the police, the nannies, the friends. No one noticed the girl under the bed for 9 days. And you expect me to believe that she just slid into that little hole and just stayed there for 9 days? Nope, doesn't match up. I really think she died somewhere else and then they put her and staged it. They probably panicked. What I think it's really, they really had an accident. I don't know how, but they knew it would probably look bad. Maybe Lisa lost it. Maybe they were just careless with a ridiculous thing in her mouth. Or maybe the medication got mixed a little too hard and she accidentally died. And then they probably staged it. They made the bed again and they hid her body inside. And the worst part, the one that makes me even go like, no, there is no way. The dogs did not find her. That's what really seals it for me. Police dogs are trained for this, so they have an insane sense of smell. It's nearly impossible they wouldn't have detected something, anything in that bedroom. So what really happened? I think Paulette died that night, that's 100% sure. I don't know exactly how, but I do think the people in that house knew. I don't think the nannies knew though. But instead of calling the police, they tried to cover it up. Slid her under the bed, remade it, called it a disappearance, and just waited. So now, you heard the story. A little girl, Paulette, with disabilities, disappears from her own bed and shows up 9 days later in that same bed. A mother who acts strangely calm, a father kept in the dark, a media storm that turned into a circus, and a conclusion that even today, for a lot of people, doesn't sit right. Was it truly an accident or a carefully orchestrated cover-up? Because ask yourself this: how does a child vanish from a room full of adults and no one notices? How does she lie under the bed in that position while nannies, police, friends, journalists walk in and out and no one sees her? How do trained police dogs with world-class noses not find her for 9 entire days? And maybe most importantly, if this could have happened in a wealthy home in front of cameras with officials watching, what's happening under closed doors where there is no cameras? So I leave it to you. Was it an accident, a failure of procedure, or something much darker that everyone just agreed to bury? Let me know what you think, because the more you look at it, the more this case refuses to stay silent. And I really, if any Mexicans are watching, I know you guys really deeply think that the parents did it, so I really want to know what you think and your theories about this. So really drop your theories in the comments. And don't forget, just because a case is closed doesn't really mean that the truth ever came out. So thank you for watching, and remember, do your skincare, and if you don't end up like a glazed donut at the end of it, you're not doing it right. Bye bye!